Hey guys, before we start, according to YouTube analytics, we live in a society. Terraria is a game that has many unique weapons that help you defeat baddies in so many ways. Some weapons are good, and some are bad. Some are hardly used at all. One such example is a Magic Dagger, an early hard mode mimic drop often left in your trash slot or traded in for some shiny coins. So, why am I focusing on this weapon in particular? Good question. Now, let's lay out the ground rules for the run. First off, I start the run with the Magic Dagger. Second, I can only use the Magic Dagger as a weapon. However, armor buffs, potions, and accessories are allowed to cause damage, simply because I'm not very good at games. However, no sentries or summons are allowed for this run. I'll be doing this challenge on a small-sized normal mode world. Oh, I can already hear you commenters snickering. Listen, I'm not a masochist. I do usually prefer expert or master mode for playthroughs, but I don't think it makes much sense for this challenge, if I actually intend to do it. So, I made a new character, and after giving myself a plain Magic Dagger with no modifiers, I loaded into the world for the first time. I was rather unlucky and got a bad axe modifier, so tree collection took a little bit longer than I wanted. However, I did get a gold coin from whacking a tree, which I didn't even know could happen. So I threw together a house for the guide and a house for the merchant, and then another one for good measure. Since I was using a weapon that almost nobody ever uses, I decided, why don't I go to the underground desert and get an armor that nobody ever uses? So I did, and I got some fossils and fell victim to a sand trap, then got fossils and then fell victim to another sand trap, and then realized that I had wasted the last hour because I didn't have the method needed to make sturdy fossils, which are the actual material you need to make the armor. I did find a traveling merchant who was selling something that would help me reduce my mana usage, which brings me to another problem that I faced through the entire run. Mana. If you're not familiar, mana is a system in Terraria that's basically like your magic power meter. When you run out of it, you can't use magic weapons, and the Magic Dagger is a magic weapon. A weapon that uses a lot of mana. So getting something like this early on that reduced my magic usage was pretty nice, because I wouldn't be getting better armor for that purpose until a little while after. After I did get the jungle hat, though, I went to the Crimson with my new drip to fight the Brain of Cthulhu, a gigantic disembodied brain surrounded by Creeper. He died. In a sudden change, I decided that I really wanted to be an optician, so I took a good look at a big eye. It was about 2 minutes before I decided I didn't like it so much. Then a meteor landed, so I mined it and then made a shirt out of it. But some goblins didn't like my new drip, so I got rid of them. I then went underground and discovered a crab statue, one that, when wired up to a pressure plate, spawns a crab. I would use this later. When my grandma was a kid, she once tied this guy named Bobby Rosenthal to a tree with her friend, and I found a goblin who had met a similar fate, so I decided to let him go. And definitely not just because he could give me things, no. Afterwards, I met this guy who said if I beat Sans that I could go into his basement, so of course, I agreed. But like all shady fights, I knew this one had to occur at night only. So in the meantime, I just went above into the sky and found some wings. That I would use for an absurdly long time. Afterwards, I would go and fight the skeleton man himself and beat him. As it turns out, though, he had been lying about having candy in his basement, and there wasn't much there that I could use, seeing as most of the dungeon drops are weapons, and I can't use any other weapon than the Magic Dagger. I kinda left soon after. Apparently at some point I also fought Queen Bee, but I can't find the footage for that, so all you really need to know is that I got the mount. It's cool. Just like you. But you know what isn't cool? Hell. So naturally, I went to lodge a complaint with the CEO of Hell. But he wasn't there, so I beat up his secretary instead. And with that, I entered hard mode. Things were gonna get a lot harder from here on out. That said, I did find Uncle Magic, the hip-hop magician who goes to kids' birthday parties, and he did give me some help on my journey. Turns out that I had been a little careless with preparing the world, and so the Crimson and Hollow were beginning to take a large foothold. Not good. But I didn't really want to solve it, so I just covered it up. And I definitely didn't break anything that would possibly spread it any quicker. Why would I ever do that? Though I did put a little bit more work in for the jungle, because for progression purposes, I did have to keep the jungle intact. But believe it or not, I did end up finding the CEO of Hell. Taxes! He forgave me for killing his secretary, so I let him stay. Then I got a Jello ad, which I didn't like very much. Jokes aside, why do we have the slime rain so common in hard mode? Really? Although it was pretty annoying, it did remind me that Queen Slime existed, so I took her out. Honestly, I had no idea if I would be able to take out the next few bosses, but I wasn't able to find out immediately because I got a blood moon. Can this stop happening to me? After that finally ended, I tried to fight the destroyer, and got destroyed. I then gave it another try, and was able to beat him. I also got his mask, which I would put on for the rest of the playthrough, because it looks cool. There isn't really much to say about the twins, other than the fact that I beat him. Then Toby Fox came and gave Sans a phase 2. But I beat him. Remember earlier when I said that taxes were the CEO of hell? They're not. It's actually the Goblin Tinkerer. See, in Terraria, you have adjectives before weapons and accessories. These are called modifiers. They determine whether something is good for you, or whether something's bad for you. If it's an accessory, they're all good, some are just better than others. If it's a weapon, you can lose damage, or you can gain damage. You can lose speed, or you can gain speed. I wanted something that gave me the most amount of damage for the least amount of mana. I got it. Twice. And I skipped over it. Needless to say, I needed to spend a lot of time getting money back, because you can't heal in boss fights with a nurse, because she doesn't work for free, how dare she, and farming for money with a Magic Dagger isn't very fun. But I did it, and I eventually got it, for the 3rd time, and this time I didn't skip over it. I'm honestly surprised that I even got up to this point, but I decided it was time to fight Plantera. So I made an arena, and I made a small arena, because I'm lazy. And ha, it didn't matter, because I beat it first try. And it definitely wasn't because I had chlorophyte armor. No. Listen, I'd like to see anybody try and do this on their own. If they can do it, respect. And because I define the rules as armor buffs allowed, I don't qualify it as a rule break. If you do, okay. With Plantera out of the way, it was time to get Spectre armor. So I did. After that, it was time to fight the Lunatic Cultist. Wait, am I forgetting something? A certain jungle boss that I'm not showing footage for? Listen, I already told you that I lost the footage for Queen Bee. I don't know what to tell you. Plus, how could I ever forget about something? It was only now that I remembered that I should upgrade my wings, so I did. Can't say that I've ever gone that long without upgrading my wings in a playthrough before. So for you guys who aren't familiar, I'm gonna give you a rundown of why Spectre armor is so important for the fights up ahead. Spectre armor, there's 2 different headgears. The set bonus for when you equip one of them is different. One of them gives you 40% healing and takes away 40% of your magic damage. It also gives you less defense. The other one does damage to nearby enemies when you damage them. This would be the basis for pretty much every subsequent boss in the entire game. What I would do is whenever I was low on health, I would just switch to the healing one, and whenever I was high on health, I would switch to the damage one. It's tedious, there's room for error, and I died a few times to the Lunatic Cultist. But eventually I was able to take him out. After you kill the Lunatic Cultist, the Lunar events begin. 4 of the hardest tribulations that you'll face in your entire Terraria journey. I was ill prepared for them, and they smacked me down again and again, nearly doubling my death counter. Here's a short montage of the pain I experienced over the next several hours. So yeah, not fun. And once you take out all 4 pillars, you begin to fight the Moon Lord. And I died almost instantly, because I was ill-prepared. And I was about to craft the item to summon him again, and then a solar eclipse happened. It always happens. Why? I don't get it. That's right. Another long and hard event had just begun. And I had nothing to gain from it. Eventually that ended. But my troubles were far from over. See, when you fight the Moon Lord, you gotta take some things into account. For one, it's a difficult boss fight, at least for me. And in this playthrough, it was a little bit more than difficult. So for Moon Lord, you have to take out 3 of his eyes and then his core. The fight consists of his hands, which have 2 of the eyes opening and closing, and launching attacks at you. His central eye will also open, on occasion, to fire a gigantic death ray at you. I believe in Master it's pretty much a one-hit. So yeah, you want to avoid that. But the thing is that you can't damage them when the eyes are closed. And when the eyes close and reopen, they heal. A lot. And that on its own is a big problem. So you could just go fighting an uphill battle. But there's another problem. The Magic Dagger. It has awful range, as you've probably noticed throughout the video. I can't even get it to hit his hands consistently, because his hands stay on either side of the screen for most of the fight, and it doesn't reach there. I can't do enough damage a second to actually do more damage than he's going to heal. Not to mention, staying alive is nearly impossible. So I was just about ready to get my buddy, my cousin, in with his own Magic Dagger and take it out together. Then I remembered. Crab statues. So remember earlier when I found that crab statue? When you kill enemies in Terraria, there's a chance that enemies will drop mana stars. These stars will replenish your mana. You can use a timer with crab statues and make them spawn automatically. Well, so what? Let me take you back in history a little bit. There used to be pets in Terraria, and there still are, but there used to be some special pets on some older versions. These pets, there were very few and far in between. I believe it was the zombie elf and the Tifia. Those were the only ones that could do damage. That's right, a passive entity. Something that you just use for cosmetics, used to do damage. People loved that. It could do 1 damage. Even if it wasn't a lot, the novelty of it was so cool. It was removed. Wait, what? Why'd they get rid of it? See, it did so little damage. So imagine this. You have a weapon that does 130 damage, and you're trying to take out an enemy. And if your pet is doing 1 damage to it and triggering its invincibility frames, you can't do 130 damage to it. So you're actually doing less damage a second because the thing is making it harder for you to hit with your own damage, so that actually hurts your damage per second. Thanks for the history lesson, nerd. Just get to the point already. Oh my god, stop stretching the video out. I decided I would turn this around. Here's how it works. I take very little damage from these crabs, right? They can replenish my mana. The Spectre armor, when I hit the crabs, has a chance to create some white balls that will attack and home in on any enemies on the screen, which includes the Moon Lord. If I stay in one place, and I constantly am taking only 1 damage, if I'm in an invincibility frame, when the Moon Lord tries to do his 100 damage attacks, he can't. So if I'm constantly staying in that stream, and I'm constantly left-clicking, because by the way, the Magic Dagger isn't an auto-clicker, I have to click manually every single time I want to attack it. If I stay in the middle of the crab statues and I'm only taking 1 damage again and again, and I have the nurse in there, I can take out the Moon Lord very slowly. Maybe there's a chance that I mess up and that he heals more than I do damage in a period, but eventually, I can take out the Moon Lord. What happened next was a fight that lasted over 50 minutes. I'm not kidding. By the end of it, my finger cramped. There were a few times where I turned off the crab statues and almost died. There were times where I almost died regardless of my invincibility frame little shenanigans, but eventually, thanks to the Spectre armor, the crabs, and the nurse, he was gone. And just like that, I had beaten Terraria using the Magic Dagger. And crabs. A lot of crabs. Seriously, I had over 99 banners. There's some things we can learn from this. People like to waste time. Crabs are good. If you want to do this yourself, be my guest. I don't know why you would want to do that to yourself. So, answer the question. Yes, it is possible if you use armor buffs. I don't know if it's possible without armor buffs. Go away, and don't tell me to do it in expert or master mode, because I won't.